Hey everyone! So in this video, I'm going to talk about the Copic colors that I use the most when I'm making art. Even though I have a lot of different colors here, there are certain ones that I always gravitate towards. I thought maybe this would be helpful for you guys if you're looking to pick up new colors to add to your collection, or if you're just getting started and you don't know what colors you want to start with. Everyone's preference is going to be different, obviously, and the colors you need are going to change depending on which piece of art you're working on, but this still might help you find some good markers to add to your collection. So what I did is I looked at each color family and made swatches of the colors I use the most from that color family. It's not about what color looks the prettiest or stands out most to me, it's what I actually use in my art. So starting with the blue violets, I only have two on here, and as you can tell, they're not very bright purples. They're pretty much just grays, but I do use these a lot. They just have a bit of that blue undertone, kind of like a cool gray, but I always go to my blue violets instead of my cool gray markers. So I've listed BV25 and BV29. There's also a 23, which is a bit lighter, but these are definitely the two that I use the most. It's really nice for shading things that are supposed to be black, but you don't want them to quite look black, or just something that's meant to be dark gray. Next up, violets. Once again, I only have two swatches, but these color families are some of the smallest. Actually, I think they are the two smallest on the entire chart. V15 is a nice, fairly bright purple, and then V25 is more of a muted, desaturated purple. I'm really drawn to desaturated colors that are a little on the light side, so this is a color I really like using. Next up, the red violets, aka pink. As you can see, I've selected a lot of pinks here. The RV10s are great, but they're really confusing. Normally when you follow along colors that start with the same digit, it's pretty much the same color, but it gets darker and darker. Here, it's kind of all over the place because this is quite a bright pink, and then this one is super desaturated, which is weird. And then it goes back to being bright, and then it goes back to being desaturated. And then the 19 is not even that much darker than the 17, which is weird. I don't know. It's kind of a weird assortment, but I find myself using these a lot. I might use just the first four, maybe the last four. It really depends on the drawing, but I use all of these quite a bit. Then for the next two, there's RV32 and 34. And this RV34 is one of my absolute go-to markers, like in my top 5 out of all my Copics. I use it for so much. It's a mid-tone and it's a bit muted. You know, I love my muted colors. But because it's a mid-tone, it can be the shadow or it can be the base color. It can even be the highlight. Like it's very versatile. I use it a lot for shading other pinks. And then RV32 gets used a lot because it's the lighter version of it. Then there's RV69, which I use quite a lot because it's nice and dark, but it's still staying a little on the purple side. It's not too red. And then I've listed RV91, 93, and 95 because again, they're pale muted colors. I use those a lot. They're very beautiful. Then we have the reds, which as you can see includes pinks because pink is really just a light red. So up top, I have the R20s. R22 is again one of those mega used colors of mine in the top 5, and then these are the colors that just go with it. I just wish R20 was a little bit lighter or R21 was a bit darker, one of the two. Copic's kind of bad for that, where some of their colors are just too similar, but yeah, that's why you technically don't need every color. I'm just a completionist, so I want every color. Then R35 is a really good basic red. I always go to that color if I want something to just be a plain bright red. Then I have R37 and R39 because those are good colors to shade with. Then we have the R80s. Again, very beautiful, slightly muted colors. In fact, R85 is very similar to RV34. Look at that. They're pretty much dupes. This color is a little more peachy than these ones, but those two, practically identical. So it makes sense that they both made the list. Haha. If I am planning on going quite dark with the shadows, I tend to use these R80s over the RV34s. Sometimes it's just a matter of what marker I look at and grab first. Next up, the YRs, aka orange. So I have YR12 listed because it's a nice light orange, almost pastel but not quite. YR16 is a good basic orange, like your plain rainbow pack orange color. And then YR18 is really good for shading. And when I say a color is good for shading, that doesn't just mean with the colors next to it. It can be with like a red. You could shade a green if you wanted to. Like the possibilities are endless. In general, I don't use orange much, but when I do use orange, I use these. Next up is yellow. I have 4 separate colors here. Y08 is pretty much your basic yellow. Y11 is a nice pale yellow that I use a lot. Y21 is a nice light creamy yellow. It's more muted than this, so it's nice if you want more of a natural look. Then there's Y28, which is one of my go-to colors when I'm coloring something that's supposed to be gold or for blonde hair. This one might make a top 5. I don't know. I don't actually have a written out top 5, so it might be more like a top 6 or 7, but this one would probably be in there. Next up is the YGs, yellow green, and there are just 3 swatches and they're all in a row, 61, 63, 67. These are fabulous. They're so great when you want something to not be too saturated. I use it so much for greenery. I even use it for clothes, everything. It's probably the green I use the most. I'm like, oh, I want something to be green? I'm gonna use these colors. Then there are your actual greens, but I don't use these ones as much. I've selected 4 individual colors. G05 is a good classic green. G16 is more of an emerald green, very pretty. G20 is a nice light green, and then G00 is nice as well. This one is a bit more on the yellow side, and this one's a bit more on the blue side. Up next are the BGs, the blue greens. Once again, I feel like some of these colors are too similar. These 2 are quite similar. These 2 especially, I feel like they annoy me when I'm using them because they're just too close. I sometimes struggle to blend into the 18. I wish the 15 was darker. Then we have BG 96 and 99, which are really great dark colors. I feel like a lot of marker sets out there really neglect the super dark colors and the super light colors, and these are really great dark ones. And speaking of super light colors, I have my blues, and I've listed the very pale quadruple zero, triple zero, and double zeros here. Really, I could have done that for any of these color families because I love the super pale colors. They're all great, but I felt like it was just going to be too much. I included it on the blue swatch because it's probably the super pale colors I use the most, and when I do use blues, I tend to go super light or super dark. Well, this isn't that dark, but yeah. This is technically in sequence, but I included it in its own category because I consider the ones that are pure zeros to be different from when it starts at 01. I don't know, that's just how I see it. So technically this continues up, and then I've skipped a couple colors and went straight to B05. That's just a very beautiful blue. It's a great mid-tone. And then my absolute favorite blues, again, would probably make the top 5. I don't know which one would make the top 5, maybe the 97. But these B90s are so good. Oh my God, definitely my most used blues, more than those ones. They're great for almost anything. Your blues don't look too bright when you use it. You can work your way all the way to a super dark color. Oh, they're just so nice. I highly, highly recommend the B90s. Now for the big boy. Whoa! There are a lot of earth tones on here because they're very versatile, and they're also used for skin tones. Also, Copic just has a huge selection of browns. So the first one is a pinky brown, E04. It's really nice for using with my other pinks. I like to use it for shading things, especially skin. Really, you can use it for anything, but I use it a lot for shading. Next are the E10s. It does go beyond 15, but these are the 3 I use the most. I use those when I want a really warm brown, and I use them a lot for skin tones. But for the most part, I'm not into the orangey browns. I like other browns. These ones are more yellowish, and then these ones are almost purplish. The E40s are something I neglected my first several years using Copics, but now I use them so much. And this is a huge long range. I don't necessarily use all of them. I might pick just a few here or a few here, but they're all so gorgeous. Sometimes I just grab a random one like E49 to shade some other browns. These colors are really great for hair, especially if you want to go blonde but don't want it to be too yellow. Definitely use some of these. Next up are the E50s. They are my go-to for pale skin. There are the E0s, which are also really great for pale skin, but that's more on the pink side. The E50s are more on the yellow side, and most of the time I prefer that. Next we have the E70s, which I'm going to drool over even more than I did with the B90s. They are both fabulous ranges of colors, but this one is just so good. Like, isn't that just the best brown you've ever seen? It's not too orangey, it's not too reddish, it's not too yellow. It's just so good. So creamy, dreamy. What are you? Are you even real? And the E74 is my #1 favorite Copic color out of all my Copics. I use it a lot, probably in almost every drawing I do, and it is gorgeous. I love you. You're my favorite. You're my BB. I honestly can't recommend these enough. It, again, depends on your personal preference, but I'm just so in love with these colors. I feel like everyone needs these. Next, I'm gonna go over some grays. So these are the neutral grays, and as the name implies, they're neutral. So they're not on the warm side, they're not on the cool side. It's just a plain neutral gray. I didn't do swatches for the entire range. I just did every other color, but really the full range could be on here. I just felt like that was a little unnecessary. So all the neutral grays are great. I feel like you don't really need to go beyond neutral gray 8 because beyond that, you really can just use black. That's pretty much true of all the grays. It gets to a point where it's like, well, this is pretty much just black, so really I just have a bunch of dupes. But these are great when you want something just plain gray. But what I prefer using over the neutral grays is the warm grays. Oh yes. That bit of warmth just makes it so much more interesting. I use these so much. It's just a great color. It just feels more lively than a neutral gray. Like, look at the difference here. Look at that. There are 2 other gray families. There are the toner grays and the cool grays, but I honestly don't use those very often. I almost always go for warm or neutral. Again, I'm only showing every other color. I did odds this time because I do gravitate towards the odds with my warm grays. I think it's because I started out with warm gray 1, 3, and 5, and I've since filled in the gaps and expanded my collection, but those odds hold a soft spot in my heart, and I like to use warm gray #5 as a base color if I'm doing something dark, like it's something that's maybe supposed to be black or super dark gray. I'll start with warm gray #5 and then build my darks from there. But yeah, I use these a lot, especially warm gray #5. Now, last but not least, we have our final swatch, the Colorless blender. I didn't actually color this one in, but you wouldn't know anyway, haha. Except now you do, because I told you. But yeah, it's just a clear marker, and it helps you blend stuff. Not dark colors, that's just gonna make a mess, unless you're going for a cool effect like that. But it's really good for blending out light colors into white. Like, for example, in my Snow White and Rose Red piece, Snow White had really pale skin, and so I used some colors to shade her skin, and then I just blended it into nothing. You could just see the white of the paper through. So that's when I would use the Colorless blender. It's also really good for fixing mistakes, and you can drip it onto dark colors to make cool effects. There's a lot you can do with it. I actually have a whole video about different things you can do with the Colorless blender. So, yeah, it may look plain because it is plain, but it's very important. I wonder how many times I said, I use this color a lot. Because that's the point of the video, Baylee. It's colors you use a lot. Everyone knows you use these colors a lot. It's in the title of the video. Oh, okay, anyway. I'm going to randomly insert some Copic coloring. At the time I filmed the rest of the video, I wasn't planning on including a little speed paint, but I decided it would add a little something extra to the video. So here's me coloring this picture I drew using some of the colors I featured in this video. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it informative and interesting, and hopefully it gave you some ideas for colors you can get if you are a Copic collector. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.